breakfast, you were saying that you wanted to talk to me a little bit about Adolf Hitler. I mean, I know a little bit about him from school, but why? What's on your mind about him?
You wouldn't talk about the Atlanta Braves, so
I will
you
not.
You go right in.
Refuse.
So you have to go for Adolf Hitler. It's
yeah, my favorite topic.
You should have just been
Adolf and I. Yeah.
You should have been more selective in your dating.
That's true.
So, here's what I'm trying to say to you. Sam Harris, in particular,
He's an atheist.
but not alone. Remember, I'm always going to quote Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, who are both alive, because they are the superior guys in that atheist camp. Okay, they're the
spokesman kind of.
They're the evangelists.
Yeah, they're the loud.
Yeah, they're evangelists for atheism these days. Okay, now I will also quote their old buddies who are now deceased, Stephen Hawking, right, and Christopher Hitchens, because I want to be fair in my treatment of them. Even though I call them the traveling medicine show, because they're trying to sell you a magic potion that is just what you get, a magic potion, just like the old West traveling medicine show. They're just barkers to me. And I think I can prove it to you. And this is a classic example of, this is Sam Harris with his derby hat on, playing carnival barker. Everybody gather around. I've got this magic elixir. It cures faith. It cures reason. It cures logic. Okay? And I'm going to sell it to you. Trust me, I'm Dr. Sam. And although he uses now, I'm a public intellectual. And I say to you, you know how I bring it up because I just hate that.
It's such a,
if anybody ever described me as a public intellectual, which I'm certain they wouldn't.
That's an embarrassing title at the end of the day.
We'd have a fight on stage if somebody said that to me. As old as I am, I couldn't take. Yes, I'd be, and yet they just beam. I'd be like, sheesh. That is just so humiliating, knowing how little you know, because the greatest men who ever lived have one thing in common. The more they know, the more they're in wonder about all they don't know. Except that these guys they don't suffer from that. I can tell you that. They are the king of the hill in their own estimation. So that's why I despise that.
Well, you used to be one of those guys.
But
not like that, but you were an atheist. But
sure,
yeah.
I was just angry.
Yeah,
Sam just makes his living spouting this nonsense.
Well, it does make money.
Here's one of the things that he's dishonest about.
Okay.
And I wish that he'd ever hear me say it. I don't mind a little fudging on the facts. I don't like it, but I'm used to that. So
you mean when he fudges up a little?
A little bit, they do, where they don't tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yeah.
But sometimes they just out and out.
Snip of it and leave out the main part.
Yeah, so here's what happens with Sam. You're always confronted with this after he makes a statement like about Adolf Hitler. That's why I'm saying this.
Oh, okay.
So if you listen to Sam's version of Hitler, it goes like this. Well, Sam says, in Mein Kampf, which is Hitler's book that he wrote, My Struggle, Mein Kampf, it's German, Mein Kampf, My Struggle. So he's saying he was on a divine mission, Bill, he would say to me.
Divine?
Yeah, because he does say it in Mein Kampf. I went back and looked.
Yeah.
He'll say he's on a divine mission.
Yeah.
Okay, so he says, well, you can tell that he's, he was Catholic, right? I'm like, yes. He's like, well, he's a Christian man, right? So he goes through this thing. So then he says, this is what the fruit of Christianity is. Then what he does is he'll say, Bill, this is all done really, all the Holocaust and everything, it actually winds up here. Did you know that every German had In God We Trust inside of his belt or some kind of, he'll give you all that kind of thing.
You mean Hitler's group?
Yes. So he's going to say, therefore, right, he attaches this all to some kind of
buckle, maybe?
Anything like that. So you say to him, do you really think that's good evidence? That's what nobody ever says it to him. But I mean, it's a silly, but they do it all the time. Wait till you see what Richard Dawkins does. He can make a single case of something and make it grow into a whole mountain. I've never seen anybody who's as poor at thinking about these things as he is. But question with Sam is Sam ignorant of the facts? Right? On one hand, if Sam was ignorant of the facts about Hitler, you could forgive him. But Sam's a public intellectual, and he makes his living talking about these things. Surely he knows, he's looked at both sides of the case, right? The one for him and the one against him.
If you're a true intellectual.
If you're a true intellectual, that's what you do. You take the best of the arguments against your case, and you listen to them, right? And if you can't refute them, you change your mind. That's what a fair-minded person does. But if all you're doing is selling books, which is Sam's deal, right, and making
speeches. Make a lot
speeches,
of money
yeah,
that
and
too.
people can applaud you if that's a big deal to you. Sam
Stars.
but Sam's crowds usually, to be honest with you, they're either dyed in the wool. I've been an atheist for this long, and somebody's finally speaking for me, or they're a bunch of 25-year-old college kids who have the aptitude that others used to have at 17 about life. They don't know anything, and they're pampered, and frankly, they put off adolescence as long, they keep it to 40 these days instead of growing up at 17. So if that seems like a broad indictment, I mean it to be, because I happen to run into them, and I'm just shocked they aren't. You can blame it on the school system, but somebody ought to have the courage to raise their hand and say, sir, that doesn't make any sense. And here's a perfect example. I'm going to read you, does Sam know that there are other quotes about Hitler? Like, for instance, a guy named Martin Bormann is his kind of a personal secretary, okay? And he has guys around him, confidants like Goebbels and guys like that, okay? Would you think they would be good witnesses, better than a single sentence in a book about revolution, basically, in my struggle, right? And what I have, what would you say? I'd say that they count. Now, after Hitler's dead, they're talking about what he thought. Now, that's weightier. Now, at least you ought to at least mention this.
Well, it's an eyewitness type thing.
Well, shouldn't you at least mention it? Like, I don't think I subscribe to what Bormann says, but I can't see why he'd lie about it, but I think he's lying. You could say anything like that, but you, in honesty, you'd tell me about it.
You'd weigh it, so
Yes.
at least it's out there on the table.
So here's the quote,
Okay.
and I want you to know, this is from a thing called Hitler's Secret Conversations, and you'll see it, and I can give you the page reference if you care. But he says this: if I can accept a divine commandment, it's this one.
And this is Hitler talking. Okay.
Yes, this is what he's being quoted at.
Okay.
If I can accept a divine commandment, it's this one: thou shalt preserve the species. And what I told you, Hitler's greatly affected by the eugenics movement in the United States, right, and by this book that he called his Bible, by Grant. Right, in the Oda Benga thing, who was lamenting the degeneration of the white race.
And you have some YouTubes on
Yes.
those. So
Yes, there are other YouTubes on those.
Those are.
So that's his one commandment: thou shalt preserve the species.
This is Hitler's one commandment.
That's what he's saying.
His
Hitler's saying
This
this.
is his total
This is
motivation.
biggest. This is the big number
biggest
one
deal.
to me. If I could accept any of the commandments, does that sound like a Christian testimony? If I could accept one commandment, it'd be this one. I don't remember that one being one of the Ten Commandments.
No, it's not.
The life of the individual must not be set at too high a price.
Wow.
He's saying that, right? The life of the individual may not be set at too high a price.
No big
Well, he
deal.
proved that, didn't he?
Yeah, let's just kill him.
If the individual were important in the eyes of nature. Now, does this sound like a Christian or like a naturalist? Somebody who's absolutely an atheist? And all that's really happened, if you follow Hitler's life, you see this continual testimony that he was a Catholic who didn't much care about Catholicism. Sam will say to you, Bill, he tried to get a seminary education. Like, how old was he? How did that go? Oh, I see. Oh, that didn't. See.
Well, I'm just looking at your life. You had some Catholic ups back.
Yeah.
You became an atheist.
Yeah.
I mean,
So what happens is,
So
because of all of these things in the 20s, Hitler, it's clear to me that by the early 20s, he's abandoned any kind of religious belief, and he grows antagonizingly, anti. Since he just gets more and more upset about all this, and he wants to do away with it. So he's telling you here, don't set a high price on life, okay? Well, that's not right, where everything's made in the image of God. If he believed you were made in the image of God, he'd set a high price on you.
Yes.
Okay? This is a a sacrificial system again, survival of the fittest. That's what's important to him. He learned that from Darwin, okay, and he ran with it. Where the eugenics movement tried to run with it, he actually did, okay? So here's what happens. He says, if nature cared about this man, is what he's saying, if it was that important, nature would take care to preserve him. See, that's just Darwinianism on the hoof. So in other words, what he's saying is if men were that important, I wouldn't have to preserve them. Nature will. Because what? It wants to protect the fittest. See,
what does he view nature as? What would
again,
what is
it's
nature
just the way that life transpires. In other words,
so
if you have selection, by natural selection, you have this force always choosing, right, the superior woman over the inferior woman, that kind of a thing.
Like in the lion's pride.
If a trait makes you stronger as a species, then that will be the trait that ends up staying, and the others will fade away. So that if you were in a society like we are in today, where 100 years ago, brawn, strong guys with strong backs were valued. Well, how is that working today? The guy behind the computer who has a weak back and a weak arm, he's valued. There's not the agrarian society, all these things change. So what would happen over a period of time is you would expect that the guy with the mind, the nature would choose to improve that, and that the strength being an important factor would diminish slowly over time, over generations. Why? It isn't as necessary now. Okay, it fits the climate of the times. Okay, that's what happens. You adjust to your climate. You're going to do it not thoughtfully. It's happening instinctively. Yes, it's what natural selection's all about.
Yeah.
Okay, so then he says, of millions of eggs a fly lays, only a few survive.
So?
He's comparing that. So human beings being overvalued is a problem for him.
Oh, so like
So,
flies.
well, now you can see why gypsies and anybody handicapped, right? And eventually, when he needs an enemy, he's going to choose the Jews in particular because there's monetary problems in the German society, and you've got somebody to blame. And he learned from, part of that you can tell is Darwinian, part of it is Marxist, right? Because Marx, remember, Darwin prints in 1859. Marx and Engels had the Communist Manifesto in 1848.
Ooh, they're right. They're brothers.
Well, and what's happening is, remember, there's a lot going on in that particular era in thinking.
Yes.
Okay,
Thinking.
And that's why bad thinking. But he's been drinking this Kool-Aid, and now you get to see it. So he says, and yet the race of flies thrives. They all die. Most of them die. They lay 1 million eggs. What's important, Bill, is that the stronger flies thrive. Okay.
So that was his big commandment.
Yeah, you can find these quotes all over, really. That's why I'm saying Sam didn't listen. Now try this one. This is from Martin Bormann himself.
Yeah, that's the guy that...
It's his second person. Yeah.
Hitler's.
Yeah. Religion is an organized lie that must be smashed. This is what Bormann says that Hitler told it. Okay? The state must remain. That just fits. He's a nationalist, right? That's what he's selling the German people. We're the Aryan race. We're the chosen race, right? We need to be careful not to mix with these other folks, right? You'll dilute the pool, right? Same old evolutionary idea. And of course, he got it from that grant. It's the blue-eyed, blonde-haired folks from Northern Europe. They're the superior group, and everybody else is inferior, okay? Now, you come into this thing, is racism the cause of that, or is racism the fruit of this evolutionary idea that he carries?
It's evolutionary.
You can see it. If he didn't have the Darwinianism in him, right, and the Marxism in him, he wouldn't be carrying out his racist policy. To him, it makes sense logically.
It's the way he's selecting. It's the way he's determining
yes.
his biggest thing.
So you always have to know which is the tree and which is the fruit. In every one of these things, you need to ask yourself. Well, Sam uses it interchangeably, whatever fits his argument. But now listen to this. He said, when I was younger, I thought it was necessary to set about destroying religion. Now, Sam just must have missed this, right? Because you think Sam doesn't know Bormann? He does. He think he doesn't know this exists? He does. But he chooses not to utilize it. Why? It doesn't fit his narrow argument. It's just silly. But when he's doing that, how would I ever have any respect for him as an honest man? I mean, if you were on the stage with him, I wouldn't be mad, but you'd be saying, I want to trust you, but here's what I know you do. And here's a classic example of what you do. Now, how could I then tell anybody to trust you? You're just giving everything, not just a minor shave and a haircut on the facts. My goodness, you're disregarding things and hiding things. And that's why I call him what I call the others, a charlatan, a chatterer, right? Because that's what they did. That's where it comes from. And you get this idea, he's chattering, but he's not really educating.
Right.
He says it's all public education. All it is propaganda. And you can, I don't know how you can defend him, and I'd like to. It's not like I dislike the guy. It's just that I find this just to be so hard to ignore. He says, I thought it was necessary, Hitler now. He's telling Bormann, I thought it was necessary to destroy religion, but listen to this. With dynamite even. I've since realized there's room for a little subtlety in how to destroy it, is what he means. The young and healthy are on our side. See? So he's saying Christianity just needs to be wiped out. And then he realizes, and later on, I think as Goebbels says, I was a Catholic and I wanted to quit the church and he wouldn't let me. Why? Hitler came to the realization that he needed spies inside the church. And so he told him not to leave, so that he could influence that and find out what they were doing and all of those.
Yeah.
Right. And remember, Hitler had the right idea in this way. Remember, when you get to Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he's part of a plot to assassinate. And again, he's not an active member, if you remember what I said about him. But he knows this plot is underway to assassinate Hitler. And they get caught, and eventually he gets hung. Right?
Now, what was...
Remember, Bonhoeffer is the guy who wrote about cheap grace,
Yes.
right? And God bids a man come and die.
He was a Christ follower.
Yeah, he's really a Lutheran pastor
Okay.
and a bright
I
man.
remember that book. That was a great book.
So, but he's going to die just before, less than a month before the war ends in 45, because he's part of this the conspiracy. And in fact, he is. He could have gone to them and said, this group is getting ready to try to do this. He didn't do it. He just remained quiet, and therefore he was culpable. Okay, he didn't do the planning, but he didn't rat on them. And then Bonhoeffer.
Okay.
And so when they started arresting people, Bonhoeffer got swept up in it. And if I don't know what he actually said to them, but he could not have said to them, I don't know anything about it.
Right.
So he dies that way. And I'm just saying to you, you'll see those kind of quotes. If you want to, you can read Bormann stuff and Goebbels, and you'll find stuff that's contrary to Sam's opinion about Hitler.
And that main point to that was?
Main point is Sam doesn't tell you about it.
Yeah.
So you only have two choices in Sam's case. He's either a dishonest
Okay.
public intellectual
Yes.
who knows everything and doesn't tell you,
Right.
or Sam's in ignorance,
You
in
need-
which case he shouldn't be a public intellectual.
Right.
Where you can't be a public intellectual and be ignorant of that to that scale, because these aren't hard to discover documents. And I'm saying Sam knows. He's not ignorant. Sam's a very bright guy. He's just a one-dimensional guy. He's got a religion, right, that he follows, and it's atheism, and he's got his desire,
Career.
and he's got a career. But he's got this one idea that he's given his whole life to, and if the facts get in the way, he'll bury the facts.
Or just
He's like a gangster, like when you're in the gangster movement, right, in New York City in the 20s. If somebody gets in your way, you bury them. That's what you do, right? And Sam buries his enemies. He just buries those ideas. The ideas and the facts tend to get in his way, and they're pesky little things, those facts. So he just has to slaughter them and bury them somewhere in New Jersey. Thanks, Sam.